the thing that's become very obvious building this product in the last like 6 to 8 months has been the wave of emails that seem to come through from users, reports that is, at the beginning and end of the week. It's almost like people have been trained, overly trained to click that button, and now they've recognized it's a shortcut to clearing out the inbox at the beginning and the end of the week. And so you've definitely got to filter through the noise there. That being said, they're not all benign, but for the most part, it's a high volume, noisy problem that we can help, sort of, it requires you to, take a bigger picture and look at things without the context of the unique organizations early on. A user's reporting it, if they don't expect it, then maybe it is a phish, but it's still very noisy.
All right, well, it's a little past the top of the hour, so let's get started. Welcome everybody to Office Hours today. Thanks for joining us. We're going to be changing things up a little bit and talking about detection and response in the email domain today. So I've got a few new folks with us today. You all know who I am, former CISO of Red Canary. With us, we have Jake Davidson, a senior product manager. You want to say, hey, introduce yourself a little bit?
Yeah.
How long you been with us?
Hey everyone, name's Jake Davidson. I've been with Red Canary since late 2018, so I've been here a while. I'm a product manager focused on a number of different products, ranging from readiness to our new product managed phishing, and then a lot of stuff around response.
Fantastic. With us is also Jim Irwin, manager of detection engineering. Let's say a word, Jim.
Sure. Hi, everyone. My name's Jim. I'm one of the managers on detection engineering, been with Red Canary for about 6 years now. Got my whole start in security in the military, carried it over to the civilian side, and I actively support Red Canary's new managed phishing product as well.
And also with us is Matthew Dean. Are you here?
I'm here. Yeah. Matthew Dean. Been at Red Canary for about 6 months. I started out as a part of the skill bridge program for the military. I've been working on the phishing project this whole time.
Awesome. Glad to have you here. Thanks for joining today. I find the email phishing domain to be an interesting domain for detection response. And step back for those that haven't heard the way we think about this. Red Canary's mission really has been managed detection and response. The managed part meaning we know that the job of detecting threats and responding to them is plagued with high volumes of signal that needs to be addressed, right? It's a very labor-intensive job, and so we've looked to operationalize that. And when we think about detection and response, we think of it in terms of different domains. So a lot of the episodes that we have put on so far, we've talked a lot about endpoint detection and response. We've done a few on identity detection and response. One of the things that we look for when we look at domains that we can invest in and lean into is domains where we can where the job doesn't require a huge amount of organizational context in order to effectively eliminate noise from a signal. And I've always felt like email is one of those domains. For those of us that have been responsible for security programs, like the amount of email that we get coming in, the amount of spam, the amount of marketing email, just the amount of noise in the email signal is enormous. So I'm excited to see that we're starting to lean into operationalizing what is a labor-intensive part of any IT program. So today we're going to jump in and talk about what our folks on the ground are seeing in that space, how we think about it, and so how we're approaching the detection and response problem in the email domain. And I'm going to just open up questions in the chat, because I would love to hear like if you could snap your fingers and have anything you wanted in detection and response in this world, like what would you want? Like what are the problems that are plaguing you as we talk through this? So feel free to speak up in the chat and we'll pass it on to the folks here. All right, why don't we jump in and just talk about like what the team is seeing so far?
Yeah. Well, I'll jump in really quick here, and just with respect to some of the most recent, and granted, this is a sort of a niche area or a subset of the broader problem space here. But with respect to the product that we've been building and around user-reported phishing emails, it's a high volume space and a lot of user reports, and that's again just a fraction. We're seeing a ton of credential phishing and less malicious attachments contained within the emails. I feel like the tools themselves have gotten pretty good at preventing those from ever hitting an inbox. But the generic social engineering and just the intent to, elicit some sort of interaction or build a relationship, establish trust has been really interesting. The data that we're seeing is like on average, every human represents about 2 user-reported emails per year. So if you, extrapolate that out, there's a higher volume problem with phishing emails more broadly speaking, outside of just the context of user-reported phishing emails.
It's interesting. Only 16% of reports were actual phishes. Like, why
Yeah.
do we start off with user-reported phishing trends?
Yeah. Yeah, I think the thing that's become very obvious building this product in the last like 6 to 8 months has been the wave of emails that seem to come through from users, reports that is, at the beginning and end of the week. It's almost like people have been trained, overly trained, to click that button, and now they've recognized it's a shortcut to clearing out the inbox at the beginning and the end of the week. And so you've definitely got to filter through the noise there. That being said, they're not all benign, but for the most part, it's a high volume, noisy problem that we can help, sort of, it requires you to, take a bigger picture and look at things without the context of the unique organizations early on. A user's reporting it, if they don't expect it, then maybe it is a phish, but it's still very noisy. I don't know. What do you see on our side, Dave, like from the reports that Red Canary has?
So, I probably unpopular opinion, but I don't put a whole lot of stock in user-reported phishing.
Mm-hmm.
We're seeing this over in the channel here, is that our users' ability to assess what is actual phishing versus what is just unwanted email
Yeah.
is I mean, it's not great. So you get a lot of stuff coming through that's it might be marketing email, like sometimes it's phishing, but it just never feels to me like a good use of people's time mashing the "this is a phish" button. Okay, that's why we have things like Sublime, and I'm slanted because at Barracuda that's where we made our name is in email security, and you would hope that the robots would help us say, hey, check this out, and this one feels fishy, right? There's absolutely a place for phishing response, and what you want is a human eventually to look at something sus and say, yeah, this one actually is a lure to looking to snare somebody. Let's pull it from every mailbox in the organization.
Yeah.
I've always wondered sort of what the use case behind really indexing on user reported phishing is, other than when you give people that button, you do have a responsibility to respond to what they do, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So that whole premise that we have this just feels odd to me, but I would love to hear more. Like, if I'm not on the ground looking at the stuff that gets reported, so I'd love to hear from Matt and Jim about what you're seeing.
Yeah, we we've been doing this for what Jake said, like 8 months. Even though that sounds like a short period of time, like we've seen it all. We've seen all sorts of stuff get reported. Everything that y'all are calling out, like the marketing emails, the online t-shirt stores. We've seen it all, but there are some interesting ones that do come through, and those are the ones that have evaded the security controls up until that point. I don't know, Matt, if you wanted to expand upon that.
Yeah, there's when it comes to emails, what is legitimate, what is spam marketing, it can get tricky, I think, pretty quickly. But some of the more interesting things we've seen, I guess, as of the last like year-ish, it would be like the Google Translate, using Google Translate to hide a URL.
Yeah, let's go to the next slide because I think Matt's talking about some cool stuff on the next slide here.
Yeah. So
Yeah. Oh, Matt, let me just do the
Okay.
high level overview here, then we can dive into that one.
Okay.
Yeah, just a couple of things to highlight here, some of the more interesting things that we've seen. So like Matt said, we're seeing threat actors use Google's website translation service in a manner that bypasses defenses by embedding a malicious link within a Google translated web page. So essentially, the rewritten URL makes the original or masks the original and malicious domain. And for that next one there around URL shorteners, what we're seeing there is threat actor leveraging an already compromised user account, then sending emails from that account with embedded malicious links. And these are typically going to be very targeted. In one specific example, we saw shortened URLs embedded in an image in the body of the email, leading to a fake login page. These are the kind of things you'll see with third-party vendor phishing attacks, and these types are more concerning, right? Because these emails are going to look like they're coming from your coworker or maybe a vendor your company works with. And then lastly, this SVGs are scalable vector graphics, which are web-friendly vector file formats. And we've seen threat actors embed files into SVG, which then leverages JavaScript to push the malicious download to its victim. In one example, a QR code hosting site was used because QR codes are created with SVG, and the hosting page had not developed a widely known malicious reputation yet. So traditional domain scanners would have resulted in a benign verdict there. But yeah, circling back, Matt, to the Google translation, we just wanted to kind of highlight that one as a more recent / interesting topic. So.
Oh, and I think I'm kind of like reading through the chat too. There's a lot of phishing training out there, but the amount of web knowledge it takes sometimes to see, oh, this is 100% malicious, or this is benign, or maybe it's an early stage reconnaissance. It's kind of impressive to me. But with the Google Translate one specifically, which I think is interesting because a lot of email security processes involve keyword matching, things of that nature. So, hiding URLs through Google Translate or through other kind of like links, scrambling words so that way they don't trigger keyword matching. It's all a way for the attacker to bypass email security.
So tell me more about how that Google Translate works.
Well, so it could work a lot of ways. I think if you want to go from the far end, a malicious actor could set up a web page using an LLM or something to put that whole website in a language that maybe traditional scanners aren't, or keyword scanners that are on the web may not pick up on the terminology. Put that into Google Translate that into like the language that their target audience or their target is going to be able to read, and then they'll embed that into the email that they send.
So the victim receives an email in their native language.
Mm-hmm.
And won't that native language email contain keywords that their spam filtering would key on, or are we not seeing that to be the case?
So with this, the particular instance we saw with this one, they were actually scrambling the words. The website itself was translated using Google Translate, and then that link of the translated page was what was sent. So none of the keywords, like for instance, I think I'm trying to think
Oh, I think I see where you're going with this. Carry on. So
like,
are you saying that if I have a malicious site that I post in Spanish, the web crawlers might not identify that as being suspicious, and then I email a link to a Google translated version of the page, and that bypasses the scanning of the Spanish content altogether?
potentially.
Okay.
Yeah, and the link itself it'll end and dot translate dot goog. So that top level domain is now different. So depending on how URL analysis is going, that also is it could throw off a URL analysis scanner. So it just depends on how, you know, the defense in depth is set up for email security. You know, threat actors are aiming to get past all of them. And that one particular instance of just like, hey, keywords, we're going to focus on that. We're going to scramble the words that we know scanners are going to pick up on. We're going to translate the website, mess up the URL analysis that is pretty basic, and we're going to get this email through. So
Right on. So I'm following the Slack or the chat over here in the channel, and folks are talking about training, user awareness training. I'm curious in the chat, how many of you feel like security awareness training materially changes your threat from phishing emails? All right, so while we're waiting for folks to respond to it, so interesting. Dave Follis says it does for us. Stephen J says rarely. I'm curious how folks are measuring that. Do we have any insight from our investigations into this, how effective training is in this, or do we really feel like you need another layer of detection and response?
I certainly think you need a layered approach. Probably too early to speak to some of the ROI on awareness training from like what I've seen with customers, although I think a lot of the push around like the user stuff in specific is top level. Like you spend a lot of money on this awareness training and invest in it and training the people, you spend time. They expect some sort of, you know, close the loop with each reporter, whether it's something we could automate or not. The emails for what it's worth, the emails that do come through and get reported, a lot of times if they are malicious, they get all the way there because the tools don't know what to do with them. There's a lot of like undetermined results, and that's how they make their way to us. The robots just can't classify it, subjective type of decision, and that's where they struggle. We did have one user at one of our early customers we were working with who successfully reported like something like 80 out of 85 emails in like a 6-month period, and the person was like one of their like in their executive team, and so they went and I think bought that person a coffee versus some other people that had never even reported a single email. So there are some interesting trends you can pull from it, but again, it's a small part of a much bigger problem.
So that is a good point. The use case of handling user-reported phishing is necessary for when things get through your email filters. So I buy that. You know, my general take on phishing awareness training is that its primary value is in reducing the amount of work that folks like Jim and Matt need to do. All right. Because not just Jim and Matt, the folks that on our detection teams, any of our detection teams, right? If you've got folks that are clicking on malicious links, if you depend on your training to keep people from doing things that people do, it's not a very strong strategy. So you've got to have the next layer of defense. And if people are giving away their creds every few hours because they're not aware, right, you're going to be doing a lot of incident response. But the primary value of that incident or that awareness training is just to reduce the amount of response that you need to do. It's not a stopgap. And we find that the same people fall for this stuff over and over again. And so, you know, the whole name and shame strategy is not particularly effective either.
No. And today's tools, I think, have enabled teams to rapidly go trace and quarantine in bulk, even off of just like a single vigilant users report. So maybe perhaps the approach that's evolving is like go make sure every department or team has their, you know, I don't know if you're a Jordan or a LeBron fan, but make sure someone's a superstar in reporting, because we can enable some herd immunity across the board if we know we've got one rock star on the team versus trying to maintain a blanket level of high awareness across 5,000 employees, if that makes any sense at all. But hopefully that I'm bad at analogies there.
Yeah, I think it does help to have a select set of folks in the organization that know what looks fishy and are helping report.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I'll buy that. There was one other novel tactic that crossed my radar recently, and I have not seen permission from him to name him by name, but I had a conversation with one of our frequent listeners live a couple of weeks ago, and we were talking shop, and he was sharing with me an email campaign that had recently crossed his desk, and it, like, by all accounts, it looked like the call was coming from inside the building. You know, if you look at the path that the email traversed, the initial email came from what appeared to be a local user's machine, from localhost, from a local user to a local user. It looked like they were sending email to themselves. I've since seen this topic start to blow up on LinkedIn and other places about abuse of the direct sender capability. And if you haven't seen it, there was actually I gotta find it here. There was a LinkedIn post that directed me to a number of couple of articles that were worth looking at. And they kind of made me sad, because if you read it, Microsoft's basically saying if you are getting these emails into your inbox that look like they came from within the house, if you got people sending to themselves, it's not an us problem, it's a you problem. You've configured your email wrong. And as I was reading through this, I was reminded of my time at Barracuda and how wildly complicated email delivery is, and how like it makes sense that we still have these problems. It's hard to configure this stuff right. And so anyway, yeah, you opted to use Microsoft. That's not on us. Like that, George. But yeah, so apparently if it is possible for somebody in domain A to send directly to an inbox in domain B if domain B's got their direct sender configured. I would encourage any of you that are seeing this to dig into those technical articles. I had fully intended to come more prepared to explain this, and as I dug in, I thought my face hurts. This is really, really complicated.
But the theme's the same. Like, the abuse of trusted services to deliver is just sprawling nonstop. I mean, we've seen it come in, you know, sort of pulling out the Google Translate example. I don't remember what exactly came of this, but at one point we saw an email come through that was an invitation to a private ChatGPT project using the OpenAI trusted service to invite the user by name. And you have no insight into what are the instructions of that private project's channel upon accepting that invite. Does it silently, you know, open a file that's attached that the user can't see? Like, it's an interesting sort of use case that someone should do a little bit of R&D around, because it's only going to get worse.
Right. And this is your weekly reminder that, like, if exploitation of computer programs begins by handing untrusted data to that program, email is like that on steroids. Anybody on the internet can hand you pretty much anything. And there are things that we have in place to protect you from the obvious bad stuff, but all the email you get is untrusted user input from the internet. So, you know, treat it carefully.
Yeah.
When we were preparing for this conversation, Jake, you talked about thinking about the question about how far left do we move our email protection or our email detection response. Tell me how you guys think about it and what moving left with email means to you.
Yeah. So we obviously have a lot of capabilities in detection and response, and what we've started to build is I would say, an extension of that detection, more almost like an intelligence source, again, specific to the user reports, but just generally speaking, like the further left you go. Dave, I'll challenge you a little bit here, but you're smarter than me, so you'll win no matter what. But like I think the further left you go, the more organizational context you need in terms of understanding that email.
So what does left mean in this context?
It could just be, I don't necessarily know that it's a continuous stream of reading every single email that goes through, but it's looking at indicators of potentially malicious intent or malicious emails or files or links embedded further on before maybe a user report or an alert comes through, versus waiting for a system or a user to tell you it's bad. Now, where you draw that line and what you call a phish versus not a phish is subject to, I think, every single person's opinion. But for us, it's further extending it past or forward before we're waiting for like a tool to say, go look at this. Can we actually go find suspicious indicators of malicious intent before they actually gain a footing?
Yeah, so I think that desire to push left moves you into the realm of competing directly with people like Proofpoint or Barracuda or Sublime in terms of looking at email as raw telemetry and making decisions.
Yeah.
Right. And so, yeah, that's a super hard problem. Organizational context always does help, but like doing that at scale, it can be challenging.
Yeah.
Which is why like having a human in the loop is always helpful.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think trying to push left in email is kind of like trying to become the EDR telemetry generator for endpoint detection response. We should, well, we do work with the signal that we get.
Yeah, that's really where I want to focus is like extending. There's problems that exist for organizations that have these tools clearly, and it's more about extending the value of the ROI that they have of those tools rather than going in and trying to become a new secure email gateway and rip out, the incumbents that have been there for a long time. So I'm really focused on that. And we've been investing in some cool things. Like we've built a triage agent, to your point, keep the human in the loop, but can we accelerate analyst decisions? And so we've done a lot of cool stuff with investments in automated triage, extracting key features, looking for suspicious threads or fabricated threads, for instance, that typically require a human eye. And we surface that as like, hey, likely requires attention versus doesn't, so that we can accelerate our analyst ability to go make that decision.
Right. Well, what I would love to have, like, I know that in the old days of email, spam detection, at Barracuda, we did use a lot of machine learning. There's a lot of pattern matching that goes on. I'm looking forward to seeing what happens when we start throwing some of these things, especially things like payment redirection fraud, into something like an LLM that is trained to say, this is what a conversation trying to induce you into fraud looks like. To use that to help starting to identify things that humans should look at.
Sounds like a good opportunity for some awareness training.
Awareness for the robots, hopefully.
Yeah, hey, there's a whole market we're creating there. User awareness training for robots.
Yeah, that's what the detection should be about.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm gonna wrap up here with talk about David Follis's point here. Most people don't take the time to harden their MTAs, enforce TLS, make sure your SPF DMARC is set up properly. I think that is true. I think it's a very real challenge for a lot of folks. That's what I was trying to get at as I was sort of stumbling over it earlier, that email flow turns out to be way more complicated than you might imagine at first. And getting it right is hard. The unintended consequences of realizing that you may think that everything's going to go through an Exchange connector, and that's maybe a bad assumption. These things are moving out from under us a lot. Just reinforces that getting your configurations right is super, super hard, right? Which is why, regardless of who you use for this, detection and response needs to be a key focus of all of our programs, because we are going to miss things. Things are going to get through, and we need to be able to catch things going bad, and stop them and shut them down in real time. We're going to have in a couple of weeks a friend of mine come on from Marsh McLennan, who's done some really interesting data work around which controls seem to have a material impact on reducing the likelihood of a cyber insurance claim. And I think it'll be interesting when we talk about that to see how many of those fall into the preventative category versus the detective category versus the response category. But yeah, it would be wonderful if we all got things set up right. But I know that I'm not confident that if I were tasked with doing that, that I'd get it right the first time either.
Yeah. Yeah, I think the layered approach is key to maintaining proper domain hygiene in general. Like the detection and response in this space can inform and maintain, help you keep up to date. Because doing it once is great, but keeping it up to date is really challenging.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I want to thank you, Matt, Jim, Jake, for coming on. Appreciate what you're doing for our customers. Appreciate your insights into the threats from the email landscape. And thank you, everyone, for joining today. Hope this was valuable to you, and we will see you next week.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.